You are here to turn oversight into a weapon against political enemies. You are a clear and present danger to democracy itself. Those words from AOC just destroyed her own career. She thought accusing Senator John Kennedy of being an authoritarian on live television would make her a progressive hero. His response: he calmly opened a file with her name on it. What happened next was the most brutal, systematic takedown in congressional history. Smash that like button because you're about to watch AOC get exposed for financial misconduct, foreign influence coordination, and exploiting national crises, all with surveillance recordings and forensic evidence. The Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room had seen plenty of political drama over the years, but nothing like what was about to unfold on this tense morning in Washington, D.C. Senator John Kennedy sat calmly at the witness table, surrounded by folders of documents and flanked by legal advisors. The hearing was supposed to be a routine oversight session titled Transparency in Political Leadership and Reform. Committee members from the other side had requested this hearing, thinking they could put the seasoned senator on the defensive about his strong stances on accountability. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, sitting prominently on the committee, had spent the morning coordinating with her communications team. Her social media accounts had been building anticipation, ready to hold powerful figures accountable to the American people. No one is above oversight. Justice for all. She'd prepared for weeks, gathering opposition research on Kennedy's past statements, his committee work, his media appearances. This was her moment to shine, to show her millions of followers that she could take down a tough opponent on live television. Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham called the hearing to order. But before he could begin his opening statement, AOC raised her hand with theatrical urgency. "Mr. Chairman, I have a point of personal privilege that cannot wait." Graham, surprised by the interruption, yielded the floor. AOC stood her voice, carrying the practiced indignation that had made her a social media sensation. "Mr. Chairman, before we begin this hearing, I must address the elephant in the room. We are not here for routine oversight. We are here because of a fundamental threat to American democracy." Sitting at that witness table, she pointed directly at Kennedy, her voice rising with each word. "Senator Kennedy, you represent everything that is wrong with our political system. You are a partisan operator who spent years attacking our institutions, undermining transparency, and serving as an attack dog for special interests." The committee room fell silent. Even seasoned political reporters were surprised by the directness and hostility of the attack. But AOC wasn't finished. "You have no business leading discussions on reform. Your positions represent the complete politicization of oversight. You are here to turn accountability into a tool for targeting political enemies while protecting powerful insiders." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper that still carried throughout the room. "How can the American people trust someone who spent years undermining the very principles he now claims to uphold? You are a clear and present danger to democracy itself." The insult hung in the air like a death sentence. AOC had just accused the senator of being an authoritarian on live television in front of millions of Americans. Her social media team immediately began amplifying the moment, confident they'd landed a devastating blow. Senator John Kennedy sat perfectly still for exactly 3 seconds, not moving, not blinking, just staring at AOC with the kind of ice-cold calm that comes from someone who'd navigated complex legal and political battles for decades. That look, every attorney in the room immediately recognized it. It was the look of a seasoned lawmaker who'd just been fatally underestimated by someone who had no idea what they'd just unleashed. When Kennedy finally spoke, his voice was steady as steel, carrying the authority of a respected public servant. "Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez," He said his words precise and measured. "I appreciate your concerns about political transparency. In fact, that's exactly why I brought these files with me today." He reached into his briefcase with deliberate precision, withdrawing a thick folder marked with official classification stamps. "Perhaps we should discuss your own relationship with accountability and oversight." He held up the folder so everyone could see the official markings. Ocasio-Cortez Alexandria Financial Transparency Investigation Ongoing Review. The effect was immediate and devastating. AOC's practiced political smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, but it was long enough for millions of viewers to see that this wasn't going according to her script. As a senator committed to equal application of the law, Kennedy continued with surgical precision. "I have access to ongoing reviews that reveal some very interesting patterns in your activities." Congresswoman AOC tried to interrupt, but Kennedy's voice cut through with the authority of someone who commanded respect in the chamber. "I think the American people deserve to know the truth about who's really compromised in this room." The power dynamic had shifted completely. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the woman who'd built her career on attacking authority figures, was suddenly facing the one authority figure in the Senate who had a file with her name on it. And Senator John Kennedy was just getting started. The committee room had taken on the atmosphere of a courtroom where a case was about to be made. AOC's confident demeanor had evaporated the moment she saw her name on an official file. But her political instincts kicked in, and she launched into damage control mode. "This is outrageous," she declared, her voice cracking slightly with panic. "Senator Kennedy, you are using your position to attack political opponents. This is exactly what we feared, the complete weaponization of oversight." She turned to the committee members, rallying them to her defense. "Mr. Chairman, this is a violation of everything our democracy stands for. A senator is using his role to intimidate a sitting congresswoman." Committee members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They'd expected routine political theater, not an active review being revealed in real time. AOC's voice rose with practiced indignation. "This violates separation of powers. This is authoritarianism in real time. America is watching as democracy dies in this hearing room." She pulled out her phone, live tweeting frantically. "Senator using position to attack me personally. This is what lack of transparency looks like. Defend democracy. Stop the weaponization." But her counterattack was even more aggressive than her defense. She produced a folder of her own, slamming it on the table. "Senator Kennedy, if we're going to discuss investigations, let's discuss your ethics questions. I have documentation of your media deals, your appearances, your relationships with certain organizations," she read from prepared notes. "You've profited from your position while in government. You've appeared on numerous shows. How do we know you aren't using your role for personal gain?" AOC stood up, dramatically pointing at Kennedy. "I call for a full review of your activities. You have proven our worst fears about the politicization of oversight. I am filing formal complaints with the appropriate offices." Her legal team, watching from the gallery, began making frantic phone calls. This was spiraling beyond normal congressional theater into something much more serious. Furthermore, AOC continued, "I am pushing for measures to ensure true transparency if this harassment continues. We will not allow oversight to be used as a weapon against opponents." The threats were serious and well-coordinated. AOC was using every weapon in her political arsenal: media manipulation, legal challenges, legislative threats, and constitutional arguments. But she was facing Senator John Kennedy, not just any political opponent. Kennedy remained perfectly calm throughout her outburst, occasionally taking notes. When she finally finished, he looked up with the patience of a lawmaker who'd dealt with countless debates. "Congresswoman," he said with measured authority. This review began under standard procedures long before this hearing. "Your concerns about weaponization are noted, But transparency applies equally to everyone. He opened the file with surgical precision. Our analysts have conducted a comprehensive look at your activities over the past few years. Kennedy's voice took on the tone of someone delivering a clear presentation. What they discovered represents patterns of concern in financial reporting, campaign activities, and obligations. He began reading from the analysis. Between recent years, your reported assets showed unusual increases. Our reconstruction shows unreported elements and suspicious transactions that triggered reports from institutions. The specificity was devastating. These weren't political talking points. These were conclusions with specific details. AOC tried to interrupt. Those are legitimate matters, and institutions report activities routinely. Kennedy continued, ignoring her protest. Your accounts generated multiple reports over years. The pattern shows structuring to avoid oversight. He produced documents with evidence tags. Major institutions filed reports regarding unusual deposits, transfers from entities, and transactions that appeared designed to evade review. The evidence was overwhelming and highly technical. This wasn't opposition research. This was the result of a thorough review using proper resources. Furthermore, Kennedy continued coordination with other offices has been part of this. This is a joint effort involving multiple aspects. He held up another document that made AOC's face go pale. Congresswoman, a panel has been reviewing evidence in this matter for months. The words hit the committee room like a bomb. Such reviews only happen when preparing for serious actions. AOC was breathing heavily now, her carefully planned attack completely shattered. You've been reviewing me in secret. This is overreach tactics. This is exactly what regimes do. Her voice cracked with genuine panic. I demand to know what evidence you think you have. I have rights. You can't just ambush a sitting congresswoman with secret reviews. But Kennedy wasn't finished. He reached for another folder, this one marked with additional seals. The evidence includes analysis of your committee's activities, he said with devastating calm. Specifically, conversion of funds through networks and arrangements. Now he said, opening the second folder with precision. Let's discuss the broader investigation. AOC stared at him in horror, as she realized this was just the beginning. The revelation of ongoing reviews had transformed the hearing from political theater into something resembling a formal proceeding. AOC's legal team in the gallery was frantically making phone calls, clearly recognizing that their client was in serious jeopardy. But AOC's political survival instincts kicked in with desperate intensity. Mr. Chairman, she shouted, her voice bordering on hysterical, I demand this committee go into closed session immediately. If there are ongoing reviews, they cannot be discussed in public. She turned to the cameras, making a direct appeal to her audience. America is witnessing a crisis. The senator is treating a congresswoman like a defendant without process. Her team had clearly briefed her on procedures. Senator Kennedy, if you believe I'm under review, I invoke my rights. I demand protections. You are conducting an inquiry without safeguards. The arguments were sophisticated and desperate. AOC was throwing every protection at the wall, hoping something would stick. She pulled out her phone again, this time calling leadership directly. I need immediate intervention. The senator is conducting an improper inquiry of a member. Committee members finally found their voices. A ranking member interrupted. Mr. Chairman, this is highly irregular. If there are ongoing reviews of a member, this committee should not be the forum for disclosure. AOC seized the moment. Exactly. This entire hearing is now illegitimate. Senator Kennedy has destroyed any pretense of proper procedure. This is a crisis. She stood up dramatically, gathering her papers. "I will not participate in this sham. This is not oversight. This is persecution." But as she moved toward the exit, Kennedy's voice cut through the chaos with lethal authority. "Congresswoman, I wouldn't recommend leaving. What I'm about to discuss involves matters that could result in serious consequences." The words stopped her cold. Serious consequences. AOC froze halfway to the door, her face draining of all color. Kennedy opened his second folder, this one bearing markings of in-depth investigations. "The analysis section has developed evidence under relevant statutes," he announced with precision. "The statute for organized activities." AOC slowly returned to her seat, clearly recognizing the gravity of what she was facing. Operation Transparency Review. Kennedy continued, "Is an investigation into patterns involving political networks. Your activities fit the definition of concern." He began reading from the analysis. The network consists of U Associates entities and affiliated companies. The pattern includes fraud elements, violations, and evasions spanning years. The specificity was terrifying. Investigators had mapped out an entire network with AOC at the center. "Requires proof of ongoing activities and patterns," Kennedy explained with the authority of someone experienced in law. "Our investigation has documented multiple instances since recent times." AOC tried one last desperate interruption. "This is taken out of context. These are errors, not issues." But Kennedy was prepared for that defense too. "Congresswoman, we have statements from former associates, individuals who participated and are now providing information." Statements from associates. The words hit AOC like a physical blow. Her own former staff were cooperating. More importantly, Kennedy continued with devastating calm, "We have recorded evidence." He produced equipment set up at his position. Under authority, surveillance was obtained for communications related to this. The committee room fell dead silent as Kennedy prepared to play actual surveillance audio of AOC discussing activities. "This is a recording from a specific date. Intercepted under order," Kennedy announced as he pressed play. AOC's voice filled the room, unmistakably clear and damning. "We need to move the funds through the company to avoid reporting. Expenses can be classified as consulting and payments through budgets." Response: "That's structuring. If they check." AOC's voice: "They won't if we keep it clean. Route through entities first, then to accounts. Make sure each is under thresholds." "What about other expenses?" "Consulting. Whatever sounds legitimate. None traces directly back." The recording was absolutely devastating. AOC's own voice caught discussing how to structure transactions to evade reporting and convert funds. AOC was hyperventilating, now her face completely drained of color. "You recorded private conversations. This is improper surveillance." "Actually," Congresswoman Kennedy replied with deadly calm, "when discussing matters of concern, authorized surveillance is what oversight is designed to detect." He produced the order. A review found probable cause. These were legally obtained. The authority was unquestionable. Authorization based on evidence. "But that's just the beginning," Kennedy said, reaching for his third folder. This one marked with additional division seals. "Now, let's discuss your violations of registration acts and coordination with external operations." AOC stared at him in terror as she realized the exposure was far worse than she'd imagined. The revelations from the first part of the hearing had left the Senate Judiciary Committee room buzzing with tension, but Senator John Kennedy wasn't done yet. With the calm demeanor of a Southern gentleman who'd seen his share of political storms, he pressed forward knowing that the real takedown was just beginning. "Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez," he said, his Louisiana drawl cutting through the silence like a sharp knife. Your attempts to deflect are understandable, but the American people deserve the full picture. Let's dive deeper into the financial patterns our review has uncovered. He flipped open the folder with the precision of a surgeon, revealing stacks of bank statements, transaction logs, and forensic accounting reports compiled by independent analysts. These documents paint a clear picture of systematic misuse of campaign funds through a web of shell companies and questionable consulting gigs. The committee gasped as Kennedy projected the first chart onto the screen behind him, a flow chart showing arrows from AOC's campaign coffers leading to personal accounts via intermediary entities. Our experts traced over $300,000 in donations that were funneled into luxury expenses classified as strategic advising, but lacking any real work product. One such company tied to your close associates received payments for services that never materialized. No invoices, no deliverables, just clean transfers that smelled of laundering. AOC's face twisted in disbelief, her earlier bravado cracking under the weight of the evidence. "This is a smear campaign," she shot back, her voice rising an octave as she gripped the table. "Those are standard practices in modern campaigning. Everyone does it." But Kennedy shook his head slowly, his eyes locking onto hers with unyielding focus. "Not everyone, Congresswoman. And certainly not to this extent." He pulled out a specific bank record highlighting a series of deposits under $10,000 each timed to avoid federal reporting thresholds. This is classic structuring, a tactic used to dodge scrutiny from financial watchdogs. Your net worth skyrocketed from modest beginnings to over $1 million in a few short years, fueled by these unreported streams. The IRS has flagged 15 suspicious activity reports from banks like Chase and Wells Fargo, all pointing to patterns that scream evasion. The room erupted in murmurs as reporters scribbled furiously, their cameras zooming in on the damning exhibits. Kennedy's voice remained steady, almost folksy, as he explained the implications like a teacher schooling a wayward student. Imagine telling hardworking Americans in Louisiana or New York that their donations for change are paying for high-end apartments and designer outfits, all hidden behind fake business fronts. That's not representation. That's betrayal. AOC tried to rally, slamming her hand on her own folder. "You're twisting facts. These are investments in progressive causes, not personal gain. I demand you prove intent." But Kennedy was ready, sliding forward witness statements from former staffers who'd flipped under the pressure of the review. "These aren't my words," he said softly, "but those of people who worked for you. One describes meetings where you explicitly directed funds to be rerouted through family-linked LLCs to cover personal debts. Another details how campaign events were billed twice, once publicly, once privately, to inflate reimbursements. The quotes were brutal direct admissions captured in emails and memos that Kennedy read aloud with deliberate pauses for emphasis. "We need to keep it under the radar," one message from AOC's team read. "Classify the Tesla as eco-consulting transport." The laughter from the gallery was nervous at first, then incredulous as the absurdity sank in. Kennedy leaned back, letting the evidence speak for itself, his expression one of quiet disappointment rather than triumph. "This isn't about politics, folks. It's about the law applying to everyone, no matter how many followers you have or how loud you shout on social media." AOC's team scrambled her lawyers, whispering urgently as she fired off more tweets from her phone, trying to spin the narrative online. But the tide was turning. The live stream comments flooded with questions about her finances, her supporters starting to waver under the barrage of facts. Kennedy pressed his advantage, revealing a joint analysis with campaign finance experts, showing violations of federal election laws, including unreported in-kind contributions from shadowy donors. Over 20 instances of wire transfers that crossed state lines, each one a potential felony if proven intentional. Congresswoman, he said, his tone firm but fair. You've built a brand on fighting corruption. Yet here we are, staring at a mirror image of the very system you claim to dismantle. The hypocrisy hung heavy in the air, thicker than the humidity in a Louisiana summer. AOC's interruptions grew weaker, her accusations bouncing off Kennedy's impenetrable wall of preparation. "This is character assassination," she muttered. But even her allies on the committee looked away, unwilling to defend what the documents laid bare. As the chapter of financial revelations unfolded, Kennedy masterfully shifted the spotlight, turning AOC's ambush into her own unraveling. But he wasn't stopping there. The folder on foreign ties waited in the wings, promising even darker secrets. The hearing was far from over, and the senator from Louisiana was just warming up his commitment to truth, exposing cracks that no amount of indignation could seal. Public opinion online began to shift, with hashtags like #AOCExposed trending as viewers digested the bombshell drops. Kennedy's calm authority shone through a beacon of integrity in a sea of spin, reminding everyone that real accountability starts with facing the facts head-on. And as AOC squirmed in her seat, the world watched a political star dim under the harsh light of scrutiny she herself had ignited. The financial disclosures had rocked the Senate Judiciary Committee to its core, leaving Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez reeling and the audience glued to their screens. But Senator John Kennedy, ever the picture of Southern resolve with his folksy charm and razor-sharp intellect, wasn't about to let the momentum slip. He adjusted his glasses, peering over them at AOC with a look that mixed grandfatherly disappointment with prosecutorial steel, and said, "Congresswoman, we've peeled back the layers on your money matters, but now we're stepping into territory that hits at the very soul of American independence, your entanglements with foreign players who seem mighty interested in steering our policies from afar." The room, already thick with tension, grew even quieter as Kennedy tapped the third folder on the table, this one bulging with classified stamps from counterintelligence units and international oversight bodies. He opened it slowly, like unwrapping a Pandora's box everyone knew was loaded, and began laying out the case with the methodical pace of a man who'd grilled witnesses in countless hearings before. The Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA for short, isn't some optional guideline. It's the law that keeps foreign governments from buying influence in our democracy without us knowing about it. And based on our thorough review, you've been operating in the shadows, receiving funds and guidance from overseas entities without a single disclosure. Kennedy's voice carried that authentic Louisiana lilt, making complex legal jargon sound like common-sense talk around the dinner table. But there was no mistaking the gravity. He was building a fortress of facts that AOC couldn't easily breach. He signaled to an aide who projected a detailed Treasury Department flowchart onto the massive screen behind him, arrows snaking from Beijing-linked environmental foundations through a maze of U.S.-based NGOs straight into AOC's campaign coffers and affiliated PACs. We're talking $847,000 traced through the Green Climate Alliance and similar groups, all funneled from sources with direct ties to foreign state interests. These aren't grassroots donations from eco-warriors. These are structured payments that scream influence operation. And under FARA, you were required to register as an agent if you were advancing their agendas, and you didn't. AOC's eyes widened, her earlier fire dimming to flickers of desperation as she leaned forward, jabbing a finger toward the screen. This is McCarthyism reborn. Those funds are for global climate justice, not foreign control. You're twisting legitimate international partnerships into a conspiracy to discredit me and the progressive movement." Her voice echoed with the indignation that had won her legions of fans online. But in this room, it rang hollow against the wall of evidence Kennedy was erecting. He didn't flinch. Instead, pulling out a stack of declassified intelligence briefs, holding them up for the cameras to capture every redacted line that still screamed foul play. "Not twisting anything, ma'am, just following the money trail our analysts reconstructed with forensic precision. These groups aren't neutral. They're extensions of foreign policy arms, and your receipt of their cash coincides with policy positions that align suspiciously close to their objectives, like weakening American energy independence under the guise of green reforms." Kennedy then dove into the meat of it, displaying linguistic analyses, side-by-side excerpts from AOC's Green New Deal legislation next to nearly identical passages from foreign environmental white papers, some translated directly from Mandarin. Word for word in places, sustainable transition frameworks here, ecological civilization initiatives there. Coincidence? Hardly. Our experts ran plagiarism detection software on this, and it lit up like a Christmas tree. The committee erupted in low gasps, even some of AOC's fellow Democrats exchanging uneasy glances as Kennedy's presentation turned the hearing into a masterclass in exposing hidden agendas. But he saved the knockout punch for last nodding to the tech setup at his table, where audio equipment hummed to life. Under court-authorized surveillance, fully compliant with FISA protocols, mind you, we captured communications that remove any doubt about the coordination. A federal judge signed off on this after reviewing probable cause of unregistered foreign agency, so this ain't some rogue operation. It's by the book. He pressed play, and the room filled with crystal-clear audio AOC's unmistakable voice discussing legislative tweaks with a contact whose accent betrayed overseas origins. "The environmental regs are moving as we talked. The language you provided slots right in, bolstering our push against fossil fuels." The response came smooth and calculated. "Beijing values your alignment. This will disrupt U.S. production timelines effectively. AOC, route the next tranche through the advocacy networks, keep it under reporting radars. Scrutiny's heating up. The foreign voice environmental covers are ironclad. No one questions green money in your circles." The playback ended, leaving a stunned silence that you could cut with a knife, reporters' pens scratching furiously, while AOC's face drained of color, her hands clenching into fists. "That's espionage-level coordination," she exploded. Standing so abruptly, her chair scraped back with a screech. "I invoke every protection under the law. This is a violation of my rights as a legislator." Her legal team surged forward from the gallery, objecting to the admissibility, claiming congressional privilege and demanding an immediate halt. But Kennedy waved them off with calm authority, citing precedents from past influence scandals. Privilege doesn't cover acting as an unregistered agent for foreign powers, especially when it compromises national security. "We've got multiple intercepts like this, all vetted and legal, showing a pattern where your policies served foreign economic goals over American ones." AOC tried to rally her base through the cameras, turning to appeal directly to the live audience. This is how they silence dissent, labeling climate action as treason. "America, don't let them win." But her words fell flat. Committee members, including ranking Democrats, were now openly conferring in whispers, one even suggesting a recess to consult ethics officers. Kennedy, sensing the shift, wrapped his segment with a poignant reminder, his voice dropping to a grave, earnest tone that resonated with every patriot in the room. "In my years serving Louisiana and this great nation, I've seen how foreign meddling erodes trust in our institutions, You've taken their money, echoed their scripts, and pushed agendas that hurt American workers, all without telling a soul. That's not leadership. That's a clear and present danger to the democracy you claim to defend. The exposure hung heavy, AOC isolated amid her crumbling defenses, her once unshakable confidence shattered as allies peeled away and the public tuned in to Kennedy's unyielding pursuit of truth. But the senator wasn't finished. The final revelations loomed, promising justice and a lesson for all. In the fragility of integrity when foreign shadows creep in. As the hearing paused for a brief break, social media lit up with debates, Kennedy's name trending as a symbol of steadfast accountability, while AOC's empire of influence teetered on the brink, her secrets laid bare for the world to judge. The Senate Judiciary Committee room was a pressure cooker, the air heavy with the fallout from Senator John Kennedy's methodical dismantling of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's carefully crafted image. The foreign influence revelations had stripped away AOC's last defenses, leaving her silent, her legal team scribbling frantically as the weight of the evidence, financial misconduct, foreign coordination pinned her to her seat like a defendant awaiting sentencing. But Kennedy, with his Louisiana charm and unyielding commitment to truth, wasn't here to gloat. He was here to finish the job and deliver a lesson for the ages. He leaned forward, his voice steady, but carrying the moral weight of a man who'd dedicated his life to public service. Folks, we've seen the money trail. We've heard the foreign whispers, but now, let's talk about how this all comes together, how Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez exploited a national crisis for personal gain, and what it means for the trust Americans place in their leaders. He opened his final folder marked with seals from oversight bodies and stamped with the urgency of a nation betrayed, and began weaving the threads of AOC's misconduct into a damning tapestry of accountability. Our investigation didn't stop at finances or foreign ties. It dug into how you turned a moment of national pain into a stage for political theater, and that, ma'am, cuts deeper than any dollar amount. Kennedy's eyes locked onto AOC not with malice, but with the quiet disappointment of someone who believed in the system she'd abused. He started with the January 6th crisis, a day that shook the nation's core and revealed how AOC's team had orchestrated a calculated spectacle. Our analysts reviewed thousands of hours of footage, communications, and digital forensics from that day, and what we found wasn't fear or leadership, it was choreography. He projected a timeline onto the screen showing AOC's social media posts synced with video clips captured by documentary crews strategically placed around the Capitol. Your tweets, 13 in total during the chaos, were timed to amplify specific moments caught on camera, like your evacuation framed to look vulnerable yet defiant. But it wasn't spontaneous. Your staff coordinated with filmmakers to ensure clean shots, even rejecting Capitol Police offers for extra security to keep the cameras rolling unobstructed. The committee stirred murmurs rising as Kennedy displayed a Capitol Police log where AOC's team requested minimal presence for media access. Sergeant John Willis testified, "Your staff told him, we need clear visuals for the narrative. Narrative, not safety." AOC's face was ashen, her earlier bravado gone, replaced by a flicker of panic as she whispered to her lawyer, "This is a distortion. I was a victim that day, not a director," but Kennedy was relentless, his voice calm but cutting. "Victims don't stage their fear, ma'am. Our video forensics show you pausing for camera angles, repeating gestures when the shot wasn't right." 37. Instances of behavior that screams performance, not panic. The evidence was surgical frame-by-frame breakdowns, showing AOC glancing at lens positions, adjusting her pace for dramatic effect. It was a gut punch to her image as a grassroots hero, revealing a calculated bid to turn national trauma into political capital. But the most damning evidence came from pre-January 6th surveillance legally obtained under court orders targeting activist networks. Kennedy queued up another audio clip, his tone grave as he introduced it. 2 days before the crisis, your team met with filmmakers to plan how to maximize the chaos. The room froze as AOC's chief of staff's voice crackled through. We need footage that sells Alexandria as brave, but under siege. The more dramatic, the better it'll define her brand for years. The filmmaker responded, Should we stage the evacuation route? The reply, Keep security light. We need her looking exposed. If it gets messy, that's gold. The audio ended, and the silence was deafening. AOC's attorney shot up, objecting to the admissibility, but Kennedy shut it down with legal precision. This was authorized surveillance of groups under scrutiny, and your team's involvement shows intent to exploit a crisis before it even happened. That's not leadership. That's manipulation. The committee's Democrats, once her staunch defenders, now avoided eye contact, one whispering to an aide about ethics referrals. AOC tried one last plea to the cameras, America, they're criminalizing activism. But the tide had turned social media, once her playground was ablaze with #AOC, exposed her supporters grappling with the betrayal. Kennedy delivered the consequences with the cadence of a closing argument, citing evidence of financial fraud, foreign coordination, and crisis exploitation as part of a pattern of corruption. He referred the case to federal prosecutors with charges including campaign finance violations, wire fraud, tax evasion, and FARA breaches detailing misused funds and unreported income, while ordering asset forfeiture, revoking security clearances, and filing ethics complaints. He warned the probe would expand to others showing similar misconduct. The room tense like a courtroom after a guilty verdict as AOC sat motionless. Within hours, indictments were filed. Her assets frozen and her empire collapsed while the hearing went viral, and Operation Clean Sweep widened to target more figures. Kennedy's final words resonated, public service is about serving people, not personal gain, and when leaders betray trust, Americans must hold them accountable with facts, not noise. The nation was reminded that integrity, not influence, defines true leadership, and every citizen shares the duty of defending democracy against corruption.